Alright, so another job on the Ferrari here. I'm replacing the fuel pressure regulators at the end of the fuel rails. It is a common problem with these cars, over time. These things are 32 years old, especially if you run a lot of ethanol fuel through there. They'll degrade, break down, and they leak fuel by the vacuum port there, and then it goes into the intake and causes a whole bunch of starting and running issues and stuff, and the car was experiencing that lately, so I thought it was time. So the nice thing about these is, you can flip the roof down and open up the little trap door behind the seats and gain access to the front part of the engine here. It's actually not too bad. There's somewhat room to work in there. You can reach in and grab all the fittings and stuff. So I got that's the brass looking one is the original, and then that's the new one. Okay, so this is a Bosch part. It was used on like tens of thousands of different cars. They're used on Volvos from the 80s up until the late 90s, Alfa Romeos, a couple other European cars, Volkswagens, Audis, etc. These, if you source them out through the Ferrari sources, I've seen them as much as like $700 each, and the engine uses 2 of them. So went online and picked these up from a California supplier. They're made by Herco, which is a European company. Got the box here in the trunk. There's a part number, PR4061. They, okay, so keep in mind that the original Ferrari part, they're asking like about $700 for them. These were $41 each. Okay, $41 US each. I was happy to pay the expedited UPS shipping 2 days to Canada. It was a lot of money, but oh my, it was so worth it. Yeah, and these things are vastly superior to the original product. They're a stainless steel body. They use a Viton rubber diaphragm inside there, so they'll handle ethanol fuels for many years to come. So I found the easiest way to take them apart was it's held on with a large hex nut on these threads on the bracket. I've got the driver's side in. There's the curb side there. So the nut, it's just on there too tight to try to remove it from the car. So you have to remove the whole assembly out with by the little 8mm bolts by the intake manifold there. So you do that, and then you can clamp it into a vise and really reef on the nut and get it out. And it's actually better this way, because now when you install them, you can clock it over so that the fitting is pointing in the right way for this fuel fitting to attach to. It's a little finicky, but it's doable. But anyways, like this car, it uses the Bosch Motronic fuel injection system. So before doing any of the work, you go into the trunk here, and there's this carpeted panel that you have to flop down. Just held on with 2 screws. And there it is. Those are the 2 ECUs. I don't know why on this car they're marked left and right on the opposite sides. Like that's left. The ECU, the 2 relays, right, and yet this is like the left side of the car and the right side of the car. So I don't know why I've followed the harness back through into the engine bay, and it does look like it's going on to the left side of the engine, so I don't know. I guess it's just the way the factory did it, or maybe when this car was serviced, they crossed the wires over. I have no idea. I'm not touching it. It runs great otherwise, so basically I unhooked the harness for the fuel pump relay, and also took the fuses out of the holder there. And later on, what I'll do is I'll put my jumper switch on here to manually operate the fuel pump, so that way I can purge all the air out of the lines, because once you remove those fuel lines, the fuel drains out, obviously, so I've stuffed a lot of rags in there and just soaked up any gasoline that came out. Not the end of the world, but... And anyways, what I'll do is, I've got my little hand vacuum pump, and I'll attach it to the vacuum dash pot on the pressure regulator, and I'll open it up and just purge the system of air and fuel. And because this is the line that goes back to the fuel tank. And there's the fuel filter there. I'm putting the original fuel lines back on. I'd like to replace them, but so far I'm having a hard time trying to find... I'd like to make my own fuel lines. And right now, I'm having a bit of an issue. They're metric fittings. They are what I can determine a 60-degree metric cone fitting. It's M14 by 1.5. I've got a source in the US where you can buy these things piecemeal. And they're not too expensive. Made by Parker. And hopefully you can get those in and replace them, because now these fuel lines are going to be like 32 years old. Don't have a lot of faith in them, but I'll reinstall them just to get by for now and do that later. There you go. Cool little project. I still have the passenger side to do, but well, weather's kind of crappy outside, so might as well take the time and do this and get this out of the way. But yeah, it's kind of neat having this little trap door here. It makes a job like this much easier. The trap door from the passenger side, you can even get to, like, here's your thermostat housing here. There's the little bleeder screw to bleed the air out of the cooling system. There's also, that's the junction box for the power supply to the engine. This is your battery cable, positive battery cable, and on the other side goes to the alternator and the starter motor. I'll have to make another video, but like, I put the top down to do this work in, and it makes it so much easier. You can lean into the car and easy to wrench on things, but for the longest time, this roof has been folded the wrong way, and it's actually damaged the fabric, because every time the roof was getting folded, it was getting pinched in this linkage here, right over here. It was acting like a scissor, and it was actually cutting through the roof material. So the trick that I found is that you gotta, like, this big flap of fabric, this was always getting tucked in, and you really need to pull it out of the way when you're folding the roof down. So then you can just fold that over and then fold this part over and then put the tonneau cover on in place. So there you go. It'll be another hour or so and get this all buttoned up and be ready for the next drive.